Singapore government will no longer discourage wearing of masks. Hello again, my fellow Singaporeans. And this is what Mr. Lee Hsien Loong told the country last Friday. Now contrast this with what he said 2 months earlier on his Facebook on 30th January. There is no need to wear a mask if you are well, he said. Now ministers repeated the instructions over and over, and for a time the Straits Times attached it daily on its front cover. When we collected masks that were being distributed, we were told the same thing. Do not wear a mask if you are well. It wasn't even advice. It came across as if they were strict orders. As a result, Mr. Lee said, Singaporeans are responding calmly and responsibly. Thank you for your trust and support. Now that injunction from Mr. Lee was ill-advised. He now says that those were guidelines from the World Health Organization. But why didn't he listen to our own doctors who were calling for the people to wear masks? On 10th February, 4 senior medical practitioners signed an advisory and didn't mince words. They said, "We are advising everyone to wear a mask always when leaving home. If one faces a person and both parties are masked, it is considerably safer, constituting a 2-barrier protection." And why did he not listen to the Korean and Chinese experts who were saying that it was important to wear masks? I'm not saying this in hindsight. As early as February, I posted this photo and said, "May, my wife, sewed some 3-ply face masks for the family. Resolves the dilemma of whether to wear a mask every time we step out of the house, especially when we can wash and reuse them. Keep the professionally made ones for use in crowded places. But remember, there's no substitute for good hygiene." Much more importantly, our chairman and infectious disease expert, Professor Paul Tambaye, explained,
Now, the reason why people wear a mask is because they're not sure that people who are sick are going to be staying at home.
the second bad judgment that Mr. Lee made, as I pointed out in my previous video, was to encourage Singaporeans to go out when the advice should have been to stay home. He told Singaporeans to go about our lives as normally as possible. Now, based on these 2 pieces of terrible advice, Singaporeans started to go out again to crowded places, all without wearing masks. Then came the second wave of infections. Are you surprised? There were 2 crucial missteps, and believe me, I'm using a very mild word here, that led to this second outbreak, which is far worse than the first. And we've not seen the end of it yet. Now, the third big mistake was when the government allowed Malaysian workers to come into Singapore to work when the Malaysian government itself imposed a lockdown and closed its borders. I asked in my last video, now how many of them are infected and working in Singapore? And sure enough, the day after I posted that video, a Malaysian worker was confirmed to be infected with the virus. Case 853, a 20-year-old was still in Malaysia on 16th and 17th in March and beat the deadline on 18th March to squeeze into Singapore. He was confirmed to be COVID positive on 29th March. Now, how many people did he spread the virus to while he was working here in those 10 days or so? How many more of them had unwittingly carried the virus across the causeway and passed it on to Singaporeans? Now, I don't get it. You've got to help me figure this one out. We let these Malaysian workers in because we were afraid that if we didn't, our workplaces would have to close and our economy would suffer. We even provided them with financial support to come in. So we let them in, they come in, spread the virus, and now we have to close our workplaces anyway. And now we have a double whammy. More infections and our economy is going to suffer because of the lockdown. Does any of this make any sense? Wouldn't it have been more sensible if we had just stopped the Malaysian workers from coming in the first place? So here's the big question. Has the PAP's carelessness and or lack of foresight led to the current situation of community spread spiking dramatically with local, I repeat, local, not imported cases of new clusters and unlinked cases of infections? In mid-March, the number of cases started to climb and hit a record high of 54 local cases on 1st of April. And while we don't want to criticize the government at every turn, we must also find the courage to speak up when we see things going wrong. A responsible opposition does not mean we keep quiet all the time, no matter what. A responsible opposition is careful to give the government leeway to do its work and even make mistakes. Because let's face it, No one can get everything exactly right from the word go. So, the SDP, we made it a point to shut up and give the PAP the space to handle the COVID virus. If you check our postings, we made hardly any criticism of the government's dealing with the virus. But if things start to go wrong, as they clearly are now, and with the PAP opportunistically trying to play politics by calling for the GE amidst the pandemic, or dispenses wrong guidelines like calling on people to go out and not wear masks, then it would be irresponsible if the opposition did not speak up. Now, the point I'm making is this, and I hope you pay particular attention to it. A responsible opposition adds value to a political system. It is crucial to the country. Now, this is because the ministers, as I've clearly demonstrated earlier, are not always right. And when and where they go wrong, the opposition cannot and must not keep silent. Otherwise, the safety and health of the people are put in jeopardy. Now, for too long, the PAP has been spreading the propaganda that the opposition is bad and out to ruin Singapore. We've had to live with that label for far too long. But as is abundantly clear from these 3 episodes, calling the people not to wear masks if you are healthy, telling the people to go out and visit local attractions when they should stay home, and encouraging Malaysian workers to come in when Malaysia imposed a lockdown. These 3 episodes demonstrate clearly, unambiguously, that the PAP's decisions are not always right, and as a result have placed the lives and health of Singaporeans in danger. Now, how can I make it clearer to you, my friends? I am not saying that Mr. Lee or his ministers are bad people or have evil intentions because they said this or did that. But you must be pragmatic and intelligent to see that they are politicians and they will take care of their own interests first before they think of the people, like even thinking of calling for a GE in the midst of a pandemic. We must not believe and follow everything the government tells us every time. We must exercise critical and independent thinking. Don't abandon your mental faculty and let the PAP do your thinking for you. It's the most dangerous thing you can do to yourself and your loved ones. This is where a responsible opposition like the SDP comes in. We'll provide you with the facts and figures, connect the dots for you, and come up with alternative ideas. Then you can be more informed and make up your own mind about who and what to believe. Isn't this a better way than simply listening to only one side? I've said this many times, and I will continue to say it again and again. I want to reason with you instead of just repeating the same old tired rhetoric. That's why I've backed up what I said with quotes and dates so that you can evaluate what I say. And I hope you will. And that's how I see the job of an opposition, and I believe you see it that way too. Think. Think critically and independently, I beg of you. Your well-being and that of your loved ones depend on it. We'll talk again. Stay well, my friends.